In the ancient city of Jezreel, capital of Israel's northern kingdom, a tale of treachery and divine judgment unfolded. At its center stood Jezebel, a name that would echo through history as the epitome of wickedness. She was more than just a queen, she was the mastermind behind the house of Ahab's greatest crimes. Jezebel's legacy is one of corruption and spiritual destruction, her actions sending shockwaves through the very fabric of Jewish religious life. Her most heinous act? The introduction of Baal worship, a pagan cult that would spread like wildfire, threatening to consume the faith of God's chosen people. Little did Jezebel know that her actions would set in motion a chain of events leading to her own spectacular downfall, a death so gruesome it would be remembered for generations to come. Baal worship, introduced by Jezebel, spread like a spiritual plague from Israel to Judah. This pagan cult took root in various forms, adapting to local customs and beliefs. Baal, often associated with Hadad in the Old Testament, wasn't just any god. He was believed to hold sway over agriculture, creatures, and fertility. Imagine a deity promising abundant harvests, healthy livestock, and numerous offspring. A tempting proposition for an agrarian society. Farmers would look to the skies, praying to Baal for rain. Families would invoke his name for children. It was a worship that touched every aspect of daily life, from the fields to the bedroom. But this seemingly benign practice had a dark underbelly. Baal worship often involved rituals that were an affront to the one true God, practices that would lead the people of Israel further and further from their divine covenant. Jezebel's reign of terror spanned 3 generations, her malevolent influence casting a long shadow over Israel. As a Phoenician princess turned Israelite queen, she brought more than just political alliance. She imported her gods and her ruthless ambition. Jezebel's first order of business: introduce Baal worship, effectively undermining the spiritual foundation of the nation. But she didn't stop there. With a wave of her hand, she ordered the slaughter of the Lord's prophets, silencing the voices that dared to speak against her. Her husband, King Ahab, and later her sons, became mere puppets in her grand design of corruption. Jezebel's influence was like a poison, seeping into every corner of the kingdom. She wasn't content with just ruling. She aimed to reshape Israel in her image, turning a nation chosen by God into a playground for pagan deities. Her actions were so abhorrent that her very name became synonymous with evil, a curse upon the lips of the faithful. Jezebel's infamy wasn't confined to her own time. Her legacy of evil echoed through the centuries, finding resonance in the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, we find a chilling parallel. The church in Thyatira is warned about a false prophetess, referred to as Jezebel. This woman, like her Old Testament namesake, led God's servants astray, enticing them into sexual immorality and the consumption of food sacrificed to idols. The name Jezebel had become shorthand for corruption and false teaching within the church. But the parallels don't end there. In Revelation 17 we encounter a vivid description of Babylon the Great, depicted as a woman drunk on the blood of saints and martyrs. This image harks back to Jezebel's murderous campaign against God's prophets. These New Testament references serve as stark reminders that the spirit of Jezebel, the spirit of idolatry, manipulation, and persecution, continues to threaten God's people long after her death. Enter Jehu, God's chosen instrument of justice. In a dramatic turn of events, this military commander was anointed as the new king of Israel with a divine mandate: seek out Jezebel and bring judgment upon her family. This wasn't a mere political coup. It was the fulfillment of a prophecy uttered years earlier by the great prophet Elijah. God's patience had run out. The time had come for the house of Ahab to face the consequences of their actions, with Jezebel at the center of divine wrath. Jehu's appointment wasn't just about changing leadership. It was about purging Israel of the corruption that had taken root during Jezebel's reign. As Jehu prepared to carry out his mission, the air was thick with anticipation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the kingdom. Little did Jezebel know that her days were numbered, and the instrument of her downfall was already on the move. Picture this: a lush vineyard nestled right next to King Ahab's palace in Jezreel. This wasn't just any plot of land. It was Naboth's inheritance, a piece of his family's history. Ahab, with his kingly appetite, saw this vineyard and imagined a bountiful vegetable garden. He approached Naboth with what he thought was a fair offer: trade the vineyard for a better one, or name your price in silver. But Naboth, faithful to his heritage and God's law, refused. "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my ancestors," he declared. Ahab's reaction: like a petulant child denied a toy, he retreated to his palace, threw himself on his bed, faced the wall, and refused to eat. The mighty king of Israel sulking over a patch of grapes. Little did Naboth know that his righteous stand would set in motion a chain of events that would seal not only his fate, but that of the entire royal family. Enter Jezebel, the puppet master behind the throne. Seeing her husband's childish tantrum, she sneered, "Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. Cheer up, I'll get you the vineyard." And so began a sinister plot that would reveal the depths of Jezebel's depravity. With cold calculation, she penned letters in Ahab's name, sealed with his royal seal. These weren't just any letters, they were death warrants. She proclaimed a day of fasting, a mockery of piety to mask her wicked intentions. At this sham of a gathering, Naboth was positioned prominently, only to be blindsided by false witnesses. Their rehearsed lies rang out. Naboth has cursed both God and the king. It was a double crime, punishable by death. The trap was sprung, and before Naboth could defend himself, stones rained down upon him. His life was the price for a queen's ambition and a king's greed. As Naboth's blood soaked into the earth of the vineyard he died protecting, Jezebel's triumph seemed complete. But little did she know, this act of supreme injustice would set in motion her own downfall. The heavens rumbled with divine anger. God's judgment, swift and terrible, was pronounced through the fiery prophet Elijah. He confronted Ahab in Naboth's vineyard, now stolen by royal decree. Elijah's words cut like a knife. "In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood, yes, yours." But God's wrath didn't stop there. A catastrophe was promised for the house of Ahab. Every male in Ahab's line was marked for death, bond, and free alike. The royal dynasty would be wiped out like chaff before the wind. Jezebel's fate, even more gruesome. Dogs would devour her by the wall of Jezreel. Her body denied even the dignity of burial. Ahab, hearing these words, tore his clothes and fasted in genuine remorse. This brief repentance delayed the judgment, but couldn't avert it entirely. Years later, in a twist of divine irony, Ahab met his end in battle against the Syrians. As his chariot was washed by the pool of Samaria, dogs licked up his blood, just as prophesied. It was a chilling preview of the fate that awaited Jezebel. The wheels of divine justice continued to turn. Enter Jehu, a military commander with fire in his eyes and destiny at his back. In a scene dripping with intrigue, the prophet Elisha sent a young prophet to secretly anoint Jehu as the new king of Israel. The oil poured over Jehu's head carried with it a divine mandate. "You will destroy the house of Ahab your master, and I will avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the Lord's servants shed by Jezebel." Jehu, a man of action, wasted no time. He rallied his troops and raced towards Jezreel, his chariots kicking up dust clouds of impending doom. His first target, Joram, Jezebel's son and the current king of Israel. In a field that once belonged to Naboth, Jehu's arrow found its mark, piercing Joram's heart. As the king's body was unceremoniously dumped in Naboth's vineyard, the prophecy began its grim fulfillment. Jehu was more than a new king. He was the instrument of God's judgment, and his sights were now set squarely on Jezebel. The stage was set for the final act of this divine drama. Jezebel, the architect of so much evil, now faced her day of reckoning. But even in her final hours, her defiance blazed. Word of Jehu's approach reached her, and rather than flee or beg for mercy, she prepared for one last performance. With careful precision, she painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and adorned herself as befitting a queen. This wasn't vanity, it was a calculated move. Jezebel positioned herself at the palace window, a regal figure staring down at the man who would be her executioner. As Jehu's chariot thundered into view, her voice rang out, dripping with contempt. "Have you come in peace, you Zimri, you murderer of your master?" Her words were a barbed reminder of another usurper who had lasted only 7 days on the throne. It was a challenge, a final attempt to assert her authority, but Jehu was unmoved. His voice boomed across the courtyard, "Who is on my side? Who?" In that moment, the balance of power shifted. The very palace eunuchs who had served Jezebel now turned against her. Jehu's command was simple and chilling: throw her down. The queen who had once held all of Israel in her grip now found herself at the mercy of those she had considered beneath her. In a moment that would be etched in biblical history, Jezebel's reign of terror came to a brutal end. At Jehu's command, her own servants turned against her. With a push, the once mighty queen plummeted from her lofty perch. The sickening thud of her body hitting the ground was followed by a more horrific sound: the thundering hooves of Jehu's horses. Without hesitation, he drove his chariot over her broken form, her royal blood spattering the palace walls and his horse's flanks. But Jezebel's humiliation wasn't complete. As Jehu went inside to eat and drink, he casually ordered, "Take care of that cursed woman and bury her," for she was a king's daughter. But when the men went to bury her, they found a gruesome scene. Dogs, drawn by the scent of blood, had feasted on her flesh. All that remained were her skull, feet, and hands. The prophecy of Elijah had come to pass in graphic detail. The hands that had penned so many evil decrees, the feet that had danced before Baal, the head that had plotted the deaths of God's prophets. All that was left of the woman who had terrorized Israel for decades. Her painted eyes and adorned hair, her final attempts at queenly dignity, had not saved her from divine justice. In a twist of grim irony, the dogs had left her extremities, perhaps repelled by the cosmetics and jewelry, the very symbols of the vanity that had defined her life. The gruesome end of Jezebel serves as a stark reminder of the power of divine justice. Every word spoken by the prophets came to pass with chilling accuracy. The woman who once held a nation in her grip was reduced to nothing more than scattered bones, a feast for scavenging dogs. Her death paints a vivid picture of the fragility of human power and the fleeting nature of earthly authority. In life, Jezebel had seemed untouchable, wielding influence over kings and nations. In death, she couldn't even command the dignity of a proper burial. This dramatic fall from grace stands as a testament to the consequences of defying God's will. It shows us that no matter how high one might climb, no one is beyond the reach of divine judgment. Her life of wickedness, her promotion of false gods, her persecution of the righteous, all of it came crashing down in a single, terrible moment. The very city where she had ruled, Jezreel, became the site of her ultimate humiliation. In the end, Jezebel's legacy wasn't one of power or greatness, but a cautionary tale of the dangers of idolatry, corruption, and the rejection of God's ways. As we close this chapter of biblical history, let us reflect on the lessons learned from Jezebel's tragic tale. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that our actions, whether good or evil, have consequences that can echo through generations. It teaches us the importance of staying true to God's path, even when faced with temptation or persecution. Remember, dear listeners, that while Jezebel's story is one of judgment, our God is also a God of mercy and redemption. He offers us the chance to turn from our wicked ways and embrace His love and forgiveness. Let us take heed of these warnings from history and strive to live lives that honor God and serve others. May we be inspired not by the fleeting power of this world, but by the eternal truths of God's word. As you go forth from here, may you be strengthened in your faith, emboldened in your convictions, and filled with the peace that comes from walking in God's ways. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.